Hello, Newcastle. I feel like we've spent the afternoon together, and this is Newswatch Nightly. We are awaiting Governor Wolf. Uh, he will be with us shortly on Newswatch as this will be his briefing after we've had the Secretary of Health give hers. 70 degrees and overcast, and not quite yet to the broadcast uh, from Harrisburg. We will be giving you that shortly as Newswatch Nightly uh, will bring you that broadcast. I don't foresee us doing anything more with. I'm going to bridge the sports, and we've already shown you that. And I want you to be able to focus in on what the governor is saying in this time of election. I think it's very important. Um, very, very important. As I definitely feel that there's some areas of the Commonwealth that really should be open. And with that being said, as I said, we're awaiting the governor, and he'll be momentarily as we put that out to everybody. Now, we'll keep going here as we take a look, and his stream not out of Harrisburg yet. It's in the coming soon stage. We've heard from everybody, and I do mean everybody. The Secretary of Health chipping in today. As that goes, she was up at 1 and basically went on about her views as she expounded what she believes the state should do. And I don't think, in my personal opinion, I definitely have issue with her views. I don't think she's qualified. I don't mind coming out and say it on air. And I think it's a very bad thing when you pick somebody with those qualifications, which she lacks, and you ride the rail of political reasons. And I do believe that's what Governor Wolf has done in this, as we've been witness to everything going to the eastern part of the state and the western part of the state really lacking in things that it needs. He has no problem here we go. I believe that's what Governor Wolf has done in this, as we've been witness to everything going to the eastern part of the state.
Thank you for joining me. Over the past few weeks, let me just wash my hands here. Over the past few weeks, I've said quite a few times that the 2019 novel coronavirus pandemic is unprecedented. It's unlike anything we've seen in our lifetimes. And we need to respond by doing things differently than we've ever done before. Before this crisis began, Pennsylvanians ate about half their meals outside the home. Now, almost every meal we eat is at home. This has had an inevitable effect on our food supply chain. Consumers, they're seeing it when the products they want are out of stock at the grocery store. Farmers are seeing it when products are going to waste because the old channels of distribution no longer hold. Our farmers are working hard, despite the uncertainty, to continue feeding Pennsylvania. And I am eternally grateful for our agriculture industry for their life-sustaining work. As I have said, we're living in unprecedented times. And so we need to adjust the way we do things to accommodate the things we just can't control. Pennsylvania does have plenty of food, but we need to make sure that Pennsylvanians have plenty of food. And to do that, we need to make sure that the food supply chain can deliver on this promise. Again, no Pennsylvanian should be going hungry. Early on, we made the decision to retool school meal programs to provide students with meals even when buildings are closed. This has helped prevent kids from going hungry while keeping the supply chain into schools relatively intact. In fact, we've provided more than 5 million meals to students across the state in the past month and a half. We've taken similar action with the Department of Aging's meals at senior centers. And the Department of Agriculture has worked to allow soup kitchens to provide meals as takeout or curbside pickup. The Department of Agriculture is working with farmers to open on-farm stands to sell raw produce, eggs, and shelf-stable packaged food. And yesterday, I announced that we will be expediting the Food Recovery Grant Program to assist nonprofit organizations with purchasing equipment, like freezers and refrigerators to store perishable food. Both of these things will help ensure food is going into the homes of Pennsylvania's families instead of going to waste. We're also working to ensure the links of our food chain remain strong by providing guidance on actions that should be taken to prevent the spread of COVID-19 among workers and volunteers. And that means places like processing plants and grocery stores will function a little differently. But it's not enough. It's not just enough to change the way we move and process food. We also need to change the way we think about food access. The coronavirus has caused an unprecedented number of Pennsylvanians to lose their incomes. Many of these Pennsylvanians have had stable jobs and have never had to seek any type of assistance. So we're working to make more Pennsylvanians aware of how to access SNAP, EBT, or WIC, or find a food bank or a pet food bank. And we're making it easier to get assistance by eliminating certain paperwork. Because we know there are now more people who need help than ever before. And we know that because of that, we're increasing the benefit amounts that we provide wherever possible. We want families to get more food. We're going to continue to ask the federal government for help on this. We've also increased the support we're providing to food banks because these organizations are invaluable allies who have been working tirelessly to ensure the well-being of their communities. About 2 weeks ago, I announced $16 million in funding to support Pennsylvania food banks through the Federal Families First Act. With that, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture and PEMA. And we're going to receive another $16 million through the Federal CARES Act. Finally, making your way through hard times is easier with partnerships. So we're partnering with as many organizations as possible to make the best use of our food. This includes maximizing the Pennsylvania Agriculture Surplus System program to reimburse the agriculture industry for their excess harvest and put that into the hands of our charitable food system. It includes working directly with organizations like Operation Barbecue Relief to deploy the power of closed restaurants and restaurant workers to get food to those in need, establishing creative solutions to the supply chain challenges we face. It includes working with the United Way 211 program to connect individuals with local assistance programs. And we're going to continue to identify partners as well as develop volunteerism opportunities for the many, many Pennsylvanians who are looking for a way to help their neighbors. Pennsylvania is a commonwealth of innovation. We have again and again risen to the challenge of changing times. COVID-19 has brought unprecedented change to our way of life, and I know that we will once again respond with the strength and courage and compassion needed to adjust and thrive. The school cafeterias and restaurant dining rooms that once were a centerpiece of not just our food intake but our social lives have gone on hiatus. But Pennsylvanians will not go hungry. We are changing the way we do things to ensure our plentiful supply of food gets into the hands of hungry Pennsylvanians. We're adapting, we're adjusting, and we're going to thrive. Thank you. And now, I'm pleased to turn this over to Pennsylvania Secretary of Agriculture, Russell Redding. Russell.
Thank you, Governor. Honored to join you today. I'd like to start by first thanking you for deeming agriculture as the entire food system as life-sustaining at the start of the COVID-19. From the day that the COVID-19 knocked on Pennsylvania's door, you recognized the importance of the food system. From the very beginning of this crisis, in addition to all of the other worries that you've had for Pennsylvania, you made food security a top priority, and I'm very, very appreciative, but not surprised. Why? As a former Peace Corps volunteer, you've witnessed firsthand the power of food to change lives. So thank you for that. If COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's the value of the essential. And for that matter, it's taught us what is essential. We're blessed in Pennsylvania with an abundantly rich agriculture and food system supported by thousands of farmers, workers, businesses that together have responded as never before to one of our most essential needs, food. Today, I'd like to build on the comments of the governor and share a bit about what we have been doing. No one person or entity can solve hunger. It takes collaboration at every level with public and private partners. The decisions that each of us make, from the farmers to food manufacturers to the folks in the food banks as volunteers, even down to decisions that each one of us make and consider about our friends and our neighbors, and we buy only what we need at the store, all have played a role to ensure that food is both available and accessible. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the complexity of our food supply chain and has required us to really think differently about what we do in Pennsylvania and across the nation. Our habits as consumers have changed, as the governor noted, seemingly overnight, as we've moved from a very mobile society to a stay-at-home order. The food system has demonstrated its resilience, changing and adapting to meet the needs of each of us. At the same time, adhering to the comprehensive guidance that the governor and Dr. Levine have issued for worker safety and to ensure that we minimize the risk to ourselves, take care of our workforce, and of course, our food system as well. We've worked with Pennsylvania's charitable food system to provide guidance for limiting risk and acquired waivers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to ensure that those who need food can receive it. COVID-19 has increased the number of people experiencing food insecurity. Many of them are unaware of where to find food resources. And a lot of them never thought they'd be on the receiving end of a food bank. So this is partly what has driven our concern in the need for our comprehensive approach that the governor has outlined and encouraged us. But there's another group. There are folks who need the service but can't bring themselves to accept the offer. please know that we want you at this table. We want to help you. The charitable food system was designed for times like this, and we've adapted the system in a number of ways to serve everyone who needs and remove the barriers to access, such as individuals applying for unemployment compensation now receive an email and print letter in English and Spanish to connect with the food resources. Those out of work without pay who significantly have reduced hours as a result of the COVID-19 are eligible to receive state and federal food resources from the Pennsylvania food banks and our pantries. And we've made it much easier. You no longer have to complete the long paperwork and income verification requirements to prove that you're eligible. We've issued guidance to food banks and pantries and community feeding sites for how to continue to distribute food for those in need with limited contact and reduced risk of exposure to COVID-19. Our Department of Agriculture has advocated for and is now implementing the Disaster Household Distribution Program, which allows us to provide critical food and supplies without verification of eligibility. The Pennsylvania Department of Education received approval from the Department of Agriculture to allow schools to distribute meals at no cost while closed to COVID-19. They also received a waiver that allows schools doing modified food schedule distribution to distribute larger containers of milk, as one example, to children for breakfast and lunch. And if you think about this, in the city of Philadelphia that goes to a once-a-week feeding, that instead of 10 half pints of milk being carried by mom or dad or the child, you now have a half gallon or a gallon. There's sense to that. Is one of the simple changes, but really important to not only nourish our children, but support our dairy farms in Pennsylvania. Soup kitchens and senior centers are allowed to offer meals at curbside pickup. SNAP benefits have been expedited. Those eligible for expedited service have benefits issued within 5 days. SNAP is critical in our food security efforts. As an example, for every meal served at a food bank, the SNAP program provides 9. To accomplish these and the other efforts, the administration has worked collaboratively with the Department of Agriculture, Aging, Education, Human Services, and Health, and many more, to include the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. Pennsylvanians can find confidence in knowing that we are working diligently to ensure that all people have access to the food that they need. And here are some ways that this is happening. We're working to protect agricultural workers by issuing guidance to employers to minimize the risk. In addition to wearing PPE, our guidance also calls for food manufacturing facilities to adhere to social distancing, take employee temperatures before shift starts, and many other measures. We've modified our requirements for seasonal farm labor facilities to protect our seasonal and our H-2A workers from COVID-19, while ensuring that farmers have labor to plant and to harvest their crops. With the help of our Department of Health and Dr. Levine, we've approved providing priority COVID-19 testing for food supply chain employees working in regional hotspots, including but not limited to those working in processing and manufacturing, food warehouses, grocery stores, and on-farm labor. We've adopted the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration's temporary food labeling policies that allow bulk food packaging and ingredients for commercial kitchens to be sold directly to consumers in restaurants and grocery stores. We're working day and night across the state and across the agencies to make sure that food remains available and accessible. I'm humbled by the incredible innovation and the collaboration and the tenacity that we've seen across our private sector, the public sector, our nonprofits across Pennsylvania to stave off food insecurity. I'll end where I began, with a simple thank you to our dedicated and life-sustaining workforce and volunteers, and to our governor, who early on recognized that bringing Pennsylvania back and guiding us through this and getting us back, it's about making sure that people are safe and they're fed and have comfort in that. So thank you. To the workers across the state who are on the farms and factories delivering sales and all the points that we consider essential, thank you for what you're doing. Sarah, back to you.
Thank you, Secretary Redding. Our first question is for Governor Wolf. This question is from Penn Live. Other states, such as Florida and Arkansas, have allowed horse racing to continue without fans since most of the essential personnel needed to operate the races already live at the track. Has or will Pennsylvania consider allowing racing to resume, perhaps without spectators, either statewide or once counties with tracks enter the yellow phase?
Yeah, what happens once we move into the reopening phase next Friday, we still haven't determined the final list, but that is certainly under consideration.
Our next question, I think, will be for both of you, but we'll start with you, Governor Wolf, on workplace safety orders from Spotlight PA. Essential employees are continuing to raise concerns about workplace conditions not improving. What assurances can you give them that your health and safety measures order will be enforced in light of the lack of citations issued against businesses for your past orders?
Yes, and I will let Secretary Redding weigh in on this. But let me just point out where we are. Whether we like this or not, there is nobody, not the President, not me, not the Secretary, not the General Assembly, can wave a magic wand and say, we are going to reopen. We are going to open up food processing. If employees don't feel safe, if the frontline workers don't feel safe going to work each and every day, they're not going to go. And so the enforcement really comes down to the employers. It comes down to the workers to say, I'm not going to go to work unless I feel safe. And that means every employer, including most centrally the essential employers and businesses that exist today, they have got to make sure that their employees are safe. So we will absolutely give guidelines, and we will do, and I think the Secretary will say, we will continue to do what we can to provide material to help employers, especially in essential services, to do the right thing by their employees and by their customers. But ultimately, it comes down to each and every one of those workers and each and every one of those business owners to make sure that they're doing the right thing to give their employees and their customers the confidence that they can come in and consume or work on those premises. Secretary? And I think the Secretary will say we will continue to do what we can.
I'm not sure there's much more I can add. I think you framed it well. The point is that we have entered this covenant between sort of employees and
do the right thing by their employees and by their customers.
Navigate through
but ultimately, it comes
mitigate
down
this
to each and
crisis
every
of
one of those
COVID-19.
workers.
So that is important to us. When we designated the industries as life-sustaining, it did not mean business as usual. Very important. Right? A lot of the mitigation efforts had to be implemented. We continue to work our way through that. It is disappointing to hear that if there are employees who don't feel safe all of this time into the COVID-19 discussion with their employers, is to please raise that concern with them, raise it with us, certainly raise it with the Department of Health as well. If they are in the food sector in any way, making sure that we as a Department of Agriculture know about that. We are trying through our Bureau of Food Safety to make sure that we're monitoring, of course, food safety, but in instances where employees do not feel that they're safe, we want to make sure that we take a look at that and address that with the employer and the employee. Thank you.
Our next question is for you, Secretary. From KDKA, and you mentioned this in your remarks, the new FDA label changes. Why should an average community member care about these changes, and how does it impact them?
Yeah, so the governor mentioned in his opening comments about the change that's occurred where we consume food, right? And this at the root of this question is where we consume food and how it's packaged and where it's consumed. As an example, there is a tremendous amount of food that's packaged for the commercial side, or what we call the food service sector. That's different in terms of labeling that you and I would normally see on a container of a household product. We're trying to make sure that we don't waste that food, to make sure that we bring all of that food into the supply chain, as the governor has noted. Part of that is the packaging that we find the product in. They're just bulk items. We want to make sure that the restaurants can use it, the grocery stores can use it, but at the same time that the consumers feel safe that that item has gone through an inspection and is good to consume, but it may not be labeled as the household item would So that's the effort, is to get the FDA to really help us out. You can think of items in terms of bulk eggs, right? What a restaurant would purchase for eggs versus what we would normally buy for a household. The packaging is different, but we just want to make sure that the consumers know that that product is safe.
Our next question, we have the same question from a number of media outlets on the meat processing plants. And I think maybe we start with you, Secretary Redding, since you're here, and then go to the governor. From Central Penn Business Journal, WFMZ, Bloomberg News, and NBC 10, your reaction to President Trump's recent executive order directing meat processing plants to reopen amid the pandemic. Do you agree with that? Does it align with Pennsylvania's social distancing plans? How does it balance out the critical need for the Commonwealth's supply chain? So I think just sort of general comments, or if you can answer some of those specifically, Secretary.
Yeah, so we've all been watching the news and certainly watch with some concern about what's playing out in the supply chain, and particularly in the meat processing sector with plants closing. That has been one of our daily conversations, to talk about just how fragile that system is. And we had our own experiences in Pennsylvania with some of the plants being closed. That caused, with a lot of work by the governor and Secretary Levine, is to establish the masking order, to raise the requirements for food processors and manufacturers that we issued, to make sure that they were doing all of the CDC requirements to protect their workers and, of course, protect the food. And last weekend made all of the food manufacturing, processing, and employees eligible for the priority testing. So in some regards, what we are doing in Pennsylvania is now captured by the executive order that the President issued last night, because these are the best practices. We've been there, very confident about what we've been doing. So to have that come from the President as a statement of both the need and the importance of that sector, but also know in Pennsylvania we have been doing what is outlined in that executive order for some time. Governor?
Yeah, I think the Secretary said it well. And again, I think the President is expressing a very broad and something that we all agree with. That is that we need these organizations to stay in business. We need employees to feel safe coming to work. And I think the guidelines are very helpful. As the Secretary said, here in Pennsylvania, we have been encouraging food processors, food producers to follow these guidelines. But ultimately, the judges of how effective the employers are in actually implementing these guidelines will be the employees. And if they look at the situation and say, I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel confident that I can go back to work, then employers are going to have problems. So again, this is not something where any government agency can wave a magic wand and say, you will come back to work. We can create guidelines. We can say this is the way, this is the best science, this is the best we know in terms of keeping employees safe amidst all the uncertainty of this pandemic. But ultimately, the decision makers are going to be each individual worker who decides whether or not he or she are going to go back to work.
This question is for you and then for Secretary Redding from NBC Telemundo Philly and NBC 10. Can you comment on the possibility of food shortages, and when are they expected and where?
I'll let the Secretary weigh in on this too, but both of us follow this all the time, every day, and to the point of actually having a county by county breakdown of where there might be problems, and we actually communicate regularly every day with counties to make sure that there are not problems. If we see a problem, then we make sure that we're rushing resources, whether it's staffing, volunteers, money, or food to places that need it. But this is a front and center, one of the key issues that we have to grapple with. It's one of the big challenges of this epidemic. We need to make sure that people have the food they need to sustain themselves throughout this process. Secretary? Yeah,
I would add that that's the exact sort of motivation for the conversations every day is about, are there shortages? Where are they? Where do we anticipate that based on unemployment, based on historical data of underserved populations, looking at difficulty in the food supply system where we've got interruption. That became the basis of developing the food security plan for Pennsylvania. That'll be released today. It's part of this conversation that we've had. So we know where to find food. We know where who our partners are. We know how to link up if we need somebody needs food in our community with in the United Way as an example. It really gives us a good sort of catalog of all of the services that are available, but it's also the basis of what we use every day to monitor, to make sure that we're on top of if there are interruptions somewhere or there's a local need at the county or even at the individual level, is that we can respond to that. And we now have the resources to do it, both financial, we have volunteers out, but we also have a written plan that guides all of us to achieve that.
Two questions for you, Secretary Redding, from 104.1 News Talk. Is Pennsylvania's excess food being shared with neighboring states in need? And where does the Pennsylvania milk supply stand? Two kind of different questions, but
no. So I referenced sort of how complicated the food system is, right? So we are not an island. We produce a lot. We're blessed to have what we have, but we also are in one of the most densely populated metropolitan areas of the country. So food flows across state lines. It flows, across international countries as well. So we're very blessed in that regard. The same is also true. There's inbound. So food is coming in. So it's triaged all the time. There's product that flows both around Pennsylvania and in and out and back and forth. So I think that is a good thing, right, because we've got some capacity, but it also allows us to share, particularly in situations where other states, because of their seasonality, may not have the same access to products that we have. One of the interesting developments, I'll just add, is the awareness of local agriculture and folks looking for local sources of food that's evolved out of this COVID-19, and it's one of those sort of revelations that people are now wondering, who's feeding me? And I think it's a great sort of rediscovery of what is here, our agriculture, our food system, and it comes together, of course, both in the marketplace, but also in the charitable network. In terms of milk, it's been one of the most painful pieces to watch in the last 6 weeks to see what's happened. We entered 2020, year 2020, with some optimism. After 3.5 years of really tough dairy markets and doing all the right things, we had a good start, and COVID-19 arrived. In the course of 6 weeks, we have increased, consumption increased by 200% initially in the first 2 weeks of COVID-19, and they've now dropped off to be 15 to 20% of what was normal. It's still elevated, but it goes back to where do we consume what we eat? And it's now all in the home. It's not outdoors, and it's not in the restaurants. So the milk situation, I would say it's stable compared to where it was a couple of weeks ago, stable in terms of supply. It is significantly depressed in price, and that's going to have an impact on, of course, the farm and the economics. So we've worked with Secretary Perdue and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The governor's been in contact with USDA asking for both assistance to them and stimulus, but it's driven out of this dairy industry. It's 30% of the agricultural economy in the state. So what happens to dairy has a lot to say about what happens to Pennsylvania agriculture.
Thank you. Next question is for Governor Wolf. This is from your content, Governor Wolf. Do you and Secretary Levine believe there are improvements thus far with social distancing, and are numbers lower than initially anticipated?
Yeah, I'd say Pennsylvania has made great progress. And I think I look at surrounding states. I think one of the things that we can all pat ourselves on the back for is actually practicing things like social distancing. If you go out now, you see a lot of people, if not all, most everybody wearing masks, and people have really tried to shelter in place. And so all those things have led to the bending the curve, and it's allowed me to say, ahead of most other states, we're going to start the reopening process next Friday. And I think we can do that because we have made progress.
And do you have any do you have any advice for people in terms of gathering in mass as the weather is getting warmer? This is in reference to people going out in Philadelphia to watch the military flyby yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think until we have a vaccine or a cure, every time you go out and you're with crowds, you're increasing the likelihood that you're going to catch this very contagious and potentially very deadly disease. I don't think you want to do that. So until we have the vaccine, until we can basically say we don't have to worry about that, when you're close to somebody else, no matter who it is, a loved one, a neighbor, just some random person, you're putting yourself and you're putting them in harm's way.
And our last question is for you, Governor Wolf, from Fox 43. As the state starts to reopen, will these daily press briefings move from virtual conferences to in-person media briefings like what we've seen in New York and at the White House?
Yeah, I would love to go back to in-person briefings. If you notice, the New York and Washington ones, the reporters practice social distancing. So I'm just not sure how many people can actually attend those things. I'm trying to make sure we have access, and I think the way we're doing it here actually gives more people, more reporters access to the kinds of questions that I think they need to ask and that we need to answer. I would love to get back to the press conferences we've had in the past where we can go into a crowded room and talk to people and answer questions directly. In the absence of that, given the dictates of this virus that we're all struggling with, I think this is a better way to do it than a few assorted reporters sitting at great distances from each other in an effort to recreate the old press conference form.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Secretary Redding. That's
Thanks.
all the time we have today. We will have another Department of Health briefing tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I feel that that's going to be it for Newswatch. Currently outside, 71 degrees, light rain on the way, and as we bid you a farewell for the evening, I tell you, stay safe and make sure that you follow what we have to follow as far as these the numbers are concerned and everything along those lines. So folks, have a pleasant evening. Thank you for tuning in to NCTV45. Greatly appreciated. Anytime on your time. Always in search of always in search of excellence. Yes, broadcasting from the greatest castle in the world, in the county of Lawrence. Have a great evening, all.